Lynched on CTV, proudly brought to you by Christchurch's #1 dining offer, Sequoia 88 at the Redwood Hotel, a food concept unequalled. Good evening. It's happening. That's the catchphrase being used by the Christchurch Mayor to describe the year ahead. So tonight, out comes the crystal ball, and Leanne Dalzell joins me, and of course Lynched starts right now. Good evening to you. Plenty to discuss on tonight's show, and my guest tonight is Christchurch Mayor Leanne Dalzell. Hello, Leanne. How are you?
I'm good. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Happy New Year to you. Did you have a good summer holiday?
I had a great summer holiday. Went up to the Coromandel. We even got a little bit of sunshine, but I hear the sun's been shining here as well.
Yes, it's been very, very hot, but
yes.
Good. I think we needed some summer heat. How are things inside council?
Pretty good. We had our first sort of official day back today. I've been back for over a week now, so I spent a bit of time preparing for the year ahead. But we had our first full gathering in an informal setting, looked at the year ahead, looked at the real pressures that are on us in terms of the long-term planning process, the district plan review, the representation review, you know, all of these processes are all coming to a head. But I'm feeling very confident about this year. It's got a really good feeling to it, a good start.
What do you think is the main pressure facing the council this year? What's the first thing that comes into your head?
Well, I think there's a little bit about thinking about the position that we're in and the incredible opportunities that really come from the disaster that we've experienced. So our first year in office was really about finding out what was the true nature of our financial problems. You know, where are the problems, where are the particular issues that we need to be solving for as a council. At the end of last year, we got to a point where we understood exactly what the nature of the problems were. We still don't know exactly what the dollars and cents are, but we've actually worked out a way that we can resolve those financial challenges. So that's why I enter the year with such confidence. I think the biggest challenge will be meeting these incredibly pressing deadlines that are imposed by legislation, but we're up for it.
In a way, you've opened up the books, you've gone, oh, shivers. We know now, let's turn the page.
Wasn't quite the word I used, but there you go.
I bet you used something a lot stronger. So you've opened up the book, you've gone, right, there's the damage. I get a sense though, and I want to be a little bit positive without sounding like a positivity viewer, we can now turn that corner and go, this is what we're dealing with, this is what we're up against, now let's get on with it. But getting on with it is the difficult part, isn't it? Because the council still needs to find X amount of money to work out some of these dream projects. Where are we at with that?
Well, somebody sort of said to me over the summer holidays, they said, well, you know, your council's broke. And I said, well, actually, no, we're not broke. We've got an incredible asset base. We've had councils over the years.
And that's the difference, isn't it? Because there is a lot of talk saying the council's broke. It's not so much the council doesn't have the cash, it's more the case the council's got to find the cash to pay for some of these major projects and infrastructure, right?
But also, there are challenges along the way where we have limitations on how much we can borrow. So obviously spreading the load over, you know, 20 years, 30 years, it enables us to take an intergenerational approach to some of the new assets that will be developed for Christchurch and the wider region. So I think that one of the things that I've been contemplating over the break has been, well, actually the story about Christchurch isn't one of, you know, a begging bowl sort of, please sir, can I have some more? It's actually a story about Christchurch generating the economic growth of the country.
But it would be nice to go to John Key and Jerry Brownlee and say, please sir, give me some more though, sir.
But with a different story. It's not about filling the gaps. We can do that as a council, and we've worked out how we can solve for the financial gaps that we've identified. What I think people in New Zealand need to understand is that Christchurch is the success story of the New Zealand economy right now, and actually investing in Christchurch is going to pay off big time, not just for Christchurch and the
without
region,
running on your parade,
but
though,
for
the
New
reason
Zealand
why,
as a whole.
I understand that, but without running your parade, I suppose one reason why Christchurch could, or hopefully will be seen as a success story, is largely because of the earthquakes in a perverse way, isn't it?
Well, every disaster brings with it an opportunity, and I think Christchurch has really seen for the first time what real opportunities could really be developed out of it. Now, I mean, all of the focus has been on the blueprint and the various anchor projects and things like that. But I have to say that over the last year, the council itself has been approached by a number of developers who bring with them these incredible concepts. Some of which I can talk about. I mean, obviously there's been publicity around the Cashmere bike trail, you know, the mountain bike facility, which will become the southern hemisphere. That will,
I think that's fantastic.
facility
I think
that will
bring
attract northern hemisphere bikers who take this really seriously. We will be the place in the southern hemisphere to come every single summer, so their winter. So I think that, but there are other ones that have been promoted as well that have been raised with me, and I sit there and I listen to some of these proposals and I think, my goodness, you know, if we were able to capture that for Christchurch, the benefits would flow through the rest of the country, but also from one generation to the next. And things like the Eden Project, you know, we've heard talk about that. That would be the Australasian Eden Project. The Eden Project started in the UK. And I'm going to forget exactly where it is, but
I know what you mean. But do you sort of feel, as Mayor,
it is the most visited tourist attraction in the UK.
I get that, but as a Mayor, do you feel sort of frustrated though, because there's so much will, well, I hope there is, I guess there is, among the council to get things done.
Yep.
And you know, I'm an impatient young man.
You are.
Is there enough sense of let's get it up and running? I get that there is a sense within council now because you now started to create this investment development unit, and I don't mind that. At first I poo-pooed that,
I know you did, I know.
But I don't mind that now. I think that is good. But does that also suggest though that we should have had this from the get-go?
Yeah, absolutely. But I wasn't there at the get-go. And you know, you can always you know, say that you can get the timing better, but I have to say the time is right now that we get this development agency which is able to analyse all of these proposals that come forward and actually make recommendations to council that we can rely on.
Okay. I want to pick you up on that. That's interesting stuff, and that gives me some hope. We like a bit of hope, don't we?
We do.
Well, still to come on Lynched here at CTV. Who's in charge of bringing in the cash to Christchurch? Stay with us. Welcome back to Lynched on CTV. My guest tonight is Christchurch Mayor Leanne Dalzell. Leanne, I want to pick you up before the break. We're discussing this development unit. And one of my little wee bugbears, I'm sure you know about it, is that, look, I understand we need this development unit, good, all power to the council, but if we need that, then what on earth does the Canterbury Development Corporation do? What does Tourism Canterbury Christchurch do? What does Sarah do? What does the CCDU? What does Peter Townsend's Chamber of Commerce organisation do? What does the council do? That's about six different agencies. You see what I mean? I like the idea, but I do wonder, well, come on.
Look, it is horses for courses. The Canterbury Development Corporation is set up to advise on economic development for the region, you know, so it doesn't have a function, it wouldn't have a function to analyse, you know, these high-level projects that are coming in and to see them perhaps developed into fruition. So the delivery agency, I think, you know, or development authority, it would have a different function than the CDC. I agree with you that we've got a development agency, we've got a tourism agency, you know, a trust that runs that, we've got events are run through the council. And in Auckland, they've actually combined the three of them.
So why not do that then?
Well, we may do.
Good.
And one of the things that we are going to be focused on very soon and this year is a visitors strategy. So, and that I think will recommend that we look at the architecture around having all of these different siloed organisations doing their own thing, and then sometimes all coming together and working on the same project. And I'm going, hang on, wouldn't this be easier if we just put the whole lot together? So I think we'll see that emerge, but it's a separate issue from what I'm talking about. We actually need an organisation, if an investor or a developer's got a great idea, they ought to be able to knock on a door, one door, and they should be greeted by one person who can then receive their project. They can then have it analysed by proper professionals.
This is all good. Don't get me wrong.
Have it recommended to the council,
I
but then lead them through the whole process. Hold their hands. We want people to stay in this country, in the city, and invest. We don't want them to disappear. It's plausible.
I get it. That's lovely. I'm not saying it's not warranted. I accept that we need this. However, if I go to the SERA website and the CCDU website, it says almost not word for word, but it gives me that impression. So as a potential investor, I'd be confused. I'd be thinking, are these organisations working together or what?
We have the go-ahead from central government to look to this being a collaborative relationship, but it may well be, because some of the anchor projects are being led solely by central government, some of them are being led by us, and some of the projects are city council projects that have got nothing to do with the whole question of the recovery post the earthquake. And it may be that we will want to use this model going forward for quite some time. So I'm not afraid of it being separate from central government. I wouldn't want it to work independently of central government. So it may be that the development authority, whichever shape that it takes, will have the capacity to partner with the private sector, with central government, or with the NGO sector or philanthropic organisations that might want to contribute. I'm not ruling out any particular approach, and I think that having a single place to start will be welcome news to investors and developers from one end of this country to the other, and also with a number of the international visitors that we receive looking for a place to start.
I just want to briefly touch on today's main headlines across New Zealand. That was housing affordability. No surprises, nothing really has changed from Hugh Pavlich's housing demographia survey. Yep. Perhaps I thought was quite telling. I don't know if it just sounds too unbelievable, but of course it's more expensive now to live in Los Angeles and Auckland apparently. Christchurch still up there, not as bad though from my understanding, but no, still pretty bad though. Yep. Now, I know you're not to blame for everything, but it's the obvious question, though. When you heard about this, no surprises, still disappointing, though.
Well, I fully expected us to be still challenged with housing affordability. It's been a challenge for the city for quite some time. And, of course, we've had pressure on our own housing market locally. And it's not just in Christchurch City, but it's on the outskirts as well, with both Selwyn District and Waimakariri District, obviously both experiencing significant growth in the amount of housing out there. But I think that the real issue in terms of the question for Christchurch has been the fact that it must have been around 7,000 property owners were basically put on the market at the same time through the residential red zone process. So under the pressures we already had, this additional pressure went on our market at the time that we had the earthquake. You know
what Hugh would say, don't you? I mean, he would say, oh, open up more fringes of land of Christchurch, problem solved. Yep. Is that too simplistic, or has he got a bit of a point?
It is too simplistic, because we actually have enough land at the moment available for people to subdivide and develop for the amount of properties that we actually need. The problem is that not everyone wants to subdivide the areas that we've put extra rights in place. So we've done a number of things. For example, where we've got a new development going in, we've said you can have a lot more intensely developed housing in those areas than perhaps previous ones were. I mean, you know, Christchurch probably started, you know, with the quarter-acre sections. They became a third of an acre, and then, you know, our city plan has a 450 square metre minimum, but now we've actually allowed smaller section sizes than that. A lot more apartment living obviously will be developed in the central city.
But who decides that? Do planners say, right, this is probably the preferred option, or is that a direct result from what people are wanting though?
No, well, that's the trouble, chicken and egg. You talk to some of those developers who've actually put a lot more properties into their development. That's easy for them to sell the big sections on the outer ring of their developments, but much harder to sell the smaller apartment-style properties or townhouse-style properties in the centre. And you know, even though they might actually be a lot more affordable than the bigger ones, because people have this different expectation about how they want to live, and it is a little bit about which comes first, the chicken and egg. I know myself, I don't have children, for example. I dream of the day of going back into the CBD to an apartment to live. That's what I'm aiming for, but not everyone wants to be in that position as well. We've
got to take a break. We need to discuss some of the positive things happening in Christchurch, because as I said at the start of this program, there are some great things. It does feel like the page has turned, and there's some great development coming. There's also some good international stuff happening. So we'll discuss that when we return. Welcome back to Lynched. My guest is Leanne Dalzell. Leanne, there is a good vibe about the city at the moment, and I'm not being, you know, the positivity fairy for the sake of it, but I do feel like things are happening. You've got international cricket, you've got soccer, you've got the biggest Māori festival coming to Christchurch. Do you think that sends a clear message, or has the message then got through to the rest of the national and international community that Christchurch is again open for business in every sense of the word? Yeah,
it's a great message, and I mean, well, let's start with the Cricket World Cup, because I think that the central government decided that, you know, we missed out on the Rugby World Cup, because you'll remember that after the September earthquake, we thought that maybe we'd still be able to host our games for the Rugby World Cup. And central government, you know, after the February earthquake, and that was no longer possible, central government came to the party and they basically said that we could be the host city and host the opening. You know, we're hosting the New Zealand part of the opening of the Cricket World Cup. The eyes of the world will be on Christchurch, and it's going to be an utterly awesome opening. So I can't tell you all the details of it, because they won't even tell me all the details of it. It's so secret and so exciting.
You know what makes me nervous though?
What?
The infrastructure, the roading, the parking. Have we got enough of that sorted? Has that been sorted out?
We're going to be doing the opening in the in North Hagley Park, and of course the Oval itself is just such a beautiful setting for the cricket itself. And we've got all of the additional seating that is required to stage an international. You know, so I just think that we're in an extremely positive position. And what it reinforces, and Te Matatini, which comes after it, and then the Under-20 FIFA World Cup, what that is sending the message is that Christchurch is again a great host city, and we will be a great host city. And if you ask anyone who comes to Christchurch, they always say that, you know, people are so friendly, that nothing's too much trouble, and people will always help you out. And I think that's what we're reclaiming, the host city status. Sure, we need a lot more hotels if we're going to be back in the business of running conventions.
Well, that's a good point. Where are they going to stay?
Well, no, everything's booked. Everything's booked. So we made sure that right from the outset, those team members, their coaches and the media contingents, you know, they were all told, you know, here's where you book, this is how we... So it was absolutely sorted out so that they wouldn't have any problems.
Today, media release very positive once again. 2 international conferences coming to Christchurch in a couple of years' time, so they'll have a conference facility to use, the convention centre, I would imagine.
Yep.
That's 2 though. I still feel nervous though that this thing is just going to sit there like a white elephant and not be used. How are you feeling about the situation now? I mean, look, it's there for better or worse. It's this thing is going to take up some space in the city. Have we worked out yet who's going to maintain that thing?
Yeah, no, not the detail of all of that, but what I think people need to realise is that this visitor strategy that we're developing is going to include, you know, Christchurch as a destination. And as a destination, that means looking at the whole question of conferences and conventions. It means looking at our international education. You know, that's also very much about Christchurch being a destination. But also Christchurch as the gateway to the South Island, the gateway to Antarctica, which is my favourite conversation starter. You know, so I think that Christchurch is really going to be putting itself back on the map. And sure, it's going to take some time. So we're not going to sort of say in the next 3 years that we could, you know, host a massive convention of the scale that we will be able to host in 5 years. So we are going to get there, and it is going to take time, but I'm feeling incredibly confident about getting there.
Just in terms of that, are you feeling confident too that there is enough investment coming to the city? I mean, I know you talked about, for example, the Port Hurls Adventure downhill racing park. That's a great start. But are you feeling confident though there's enough agencies that have got to grips with any potential investors? Because I know we've got, what, the Vodafone Centre, which is going to be great. But is anything else?
Look, it is the one thing that does bother me, and this is why, you know, the focus on the development agency has just been a real big thing for my, you know, beginning of this year. This is something I really want to see happen, is that we actually do need to encourage investment, and I believe that we have potentially lost some opportunity along the way. I don't want to let another investor leave Christchurch without having explored the full opportunities that reside here. And the opportunities are there. I've been quoting Rahm Emanuel, who's now the mayor of Chicago. He was the chief presidential advisor or chief of staff to the American president. And he said, you should never let a serious crisis go to waste. And what I mean by that is that it's an opportunity to do things you didn't think you could do before. And if you think of everything that's happening in this year, it's an opportunity to do things we never thought we could do before. And that's what's great for Christchurch.
Well, you've got a big challenge ahead of you, but as I say, I hope you can do it. Christchurch Mayor Lynched, appreciate your time.
Great to see you.
Thanks for coming on the show. And that is our show. You might like to comment on tonight's program. You can do so by giving me a call tomorrow on Canterbury Mornings from 8:30 on News Talk ZB. But from me and all the CTV team, have a great night. Lynched on CTV, proudly brought to you by Christchurch's #1 dining offer, Sequoia 88 at the Redwood Hotel, a food concept unequalled.